today we're going to be reviewing, starting with chapter 1, Misunderstanding, the Hidden Trap. So this one, for me, was the more I thought about it this morning, the bigger and more significant this chapter seems to be for me. I'm curious to hear how it hit you too.
Yeah, well, I'm curious about why it's so big for you, Greg. Go, Elaine, go.
Sorry, yeah. I was just rereading it again, and that's exactly what struck me. Like if I was sort of launch myself out as a teacher of this stuff, let's say, forget the word teacher, but you know what I mean. It could just about be the full total of any course I might do around this, because like I think everything is in this, and everything I think is in the, as Jamie writes at some point, which I will have underlined, but it's I'll be something when. And that just sounds to me like the sum total of everything we do, you know, trying to get our heads around that. And the next thing I was thinking that when we do, life is just wonderful. And like, so that's for me, that's the end of the book. I don't need to read any more after that.
The end.
Yeah. Yeah, but in the same way, Greg, as you said, you know, so it's like huge. Struck me as a really, really relevant thing to the human experience of suffering, basically. That's what struck me. Yeah.
Do you want to go, Lynn, or do you want me to answer your question?
No, I'd love you to answer,
sure.
Because obviously you're impacted by the.
I mean, it occurred to me this as like the foundation of all the learning throughout the book, and it kind of reminded me of when I took clarity certification training with Jamie. Module 1, I believe, was it only works one way, inside out, and which speaks to this whole hidden hamster wheel trap thing. And even though I've been through all that training and I've been like fully engaged with the principles for the last 2 years, I'm caught in the trap like multiple times a day, every day of my life. So it's like, even when you know the trap is there, you know the hallmarks of the trap, the warning signals, you know all the sentences, the I will be blank when blank. I'm still caught up in it. Like I started making a list this morning. So this is I'll be happy when my daughter isn't stressed out, or when she's happy, when my Toronto Maple Leafs win a Stanley Cup. Today's garbage day here, so I wrote, I'll be happy when the garbage gets collected. I'll be happy when my dog when my dog eats his breakfast, because this morning for some reason he's on a hunger strike this morning, he won't eat. I'll be happy when my wife is happy. I'll be happy when I get paid. I'll be happy when I get a new client or a customer. And I mean, that's just barely scratching the surface of the list of things that goes on in my head at any given moment throughout the day. So it's like the trap. It's almost like this trap is so pervasive and so persistent. It's there all the time to fall into, and most of us, even the ones like the three of us that are reading clarity and into the principles, fall into this trap all the time. So that's kind of what stood out to me, is just the importance of this chapter and coming back to this chapter all the time, and realizing that you're in that trap. And then the other thing, just as Elaine was speaking, that jumped out at me, was just using the word misunderstanding to describe it. Is that there's the presupposition of innocence in there, right? Like we're innocently following into this trap all the time. It's just a misunderstanding. Like you're not doing anything wrong, you're not being bad or whatever. It's just you're caught in a misunderstanding.
And that was from both of you. That was so eloquent. I think the only thing I would add is it's going to be like this forever, I expect. I can't imagine I can't imagine there being a day where we don't fall into it at some point.
Yeah.
If that day ever happened, I think that would be amazing. But since we're human, I don't actually think there'll be that day. But the sheer fact that we know, the sheer fact that we know there is a misunderstanding, to me looks a bit like a gift. That because when you don't, I mean, I've sent a message to Elaine the other day to say, I feel a bit guilty how happy I feel today. And you know that everything's changed, nothing's changed. I was having one of those days and I'm like, oh, jolly and bouncing around. And it's the same kind of as yesterday or last week, but it isn't, because of something, a little click, something just shifts. And even if that little shift is just for a moment, if we can help people have that shift for a moment, you know, to just see that this is how we exist, that it's huge. It's actually huge.
Yeah. The way you described
and
it,
then not to feel guilty and everything. Yeah.
The way you described it, I thought of Jamie's equation: clarity equals capacity minus contamination. Like what you just described was a moment of less contamination or no contamination, and all of a sudden, oh look what's there. Happiness.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Today is something worldwide or International Happy Day or something. International Happiness Day or something today.
Oh, is it?
So is it? That's appropriate. Yeah, something like that. So that's a cool one. Can I bring you there? Because I actually made a few notes. I'm reading the book and thinking of, as we were calling them last week, normal people. Where we hear these words all the time, and are we maybe taking them for granted and going, yeah. But the whole contamination, just that word contamination, if we say that word to other people, they'll think of a million other things. They'll think of dirty water, or they'll think of sewage, or they'll think of, I don't know what they'll think of. But for the sake of clarity here, when that word comes up for you guys, what comes up for you?
I can pretty much remember when I first heard that used in the sense that Jamie uses it, let's say in the sense of his equation. I can remember saying, oh yeah, okay, I get that, I like that, I can see that word. And here I'm comparing to other words that Jamie sometimes brings in on our training programs or on whatever, and one of them's coming to mind, like it was sovereignty, which I just can't really get my head around, so I'll have to find another word. But as he said, speaks about contamination, I totally get that. But it was interesting how, for me, whatever that word means, and indeed it does also mean dirty water or contaminated food or food poisoning or something toxic. It does indeed mean many other things. In this sort of area, to me, it's a limiting belief, which interestingly also got my head a bit sort of confused, because like, well, okay, it kind of sounds easy to take contamination away because you just drop it. But then I thought, yeah, hell, but what about all these limiting beliefs that probably I still have? And even as I'm speaking, I'm wondering if I'm actually even expressing it, the limiting belief. So I think of, instead of contamination, I think of limiting beliefs, but it then brings me to think, well, and this also something to do with what we've just said before. It's the question then I ask is, well, what about all that stuff? Because it's okay until you can see that, like, okay, I've got this limiting belief and I know it's contamination and that's all it is, so I can just get rid of it. But what happens, which obviously is the rest of the book, I mean, this makes sense, but I'm thinking of the person who doesn't know anything about this. What happens when you don't even know what your limiting belief is? So it's that bit that's even beyond, well, I get that intellectually, like Jamie says, sort of and while many people who have explored the domains of brain change through NLP, spirituality, personal development, meditation, etc., would say that they know that their core states don't come from their circumstances, their behavior often suggests that they don't really know it. So we'll say something like, I know that intellectually, but well, I'm kind of wondering what happens when we just don't know anything at all. Yet we do know there's something that's not right in our world. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting. Yeah, for me, when I think of the word contamination, I just have this picture of like, a herd of kind of like the movie Monsters Inc. when the monster comes out of the portal and he has a human sock on his back, and they call it I forget what the code is, and all the guys in the suits come to decontaminate.
A hazmat suit or whatever.
Yeah, the hazmat guys. Yeah.
Hazmat. Yeah.
So it's funny because the word contamination, like in that sense, it's such a huge, big, serious thing. But in the context of contaminated thinking, it doesn't have to be huge. It can be just the smallest little thing that kind of like one drop of a chemical in a pool of water contaminates the whole pool. Depending on what your parts per million thing is, but yeah, and words that come to mind like unwanted, dirty, unnecessary. Those are all kind of words that pop to mind when I think of contamination.
For me, as much as contaminated thinking is, my limiting beliefs about certain things, or how I think something outside is impacting me, or what I think of other people think of me, all of that to me is contaminated thinking. And for some reason, and there's also, and this all, I don't know how to really frame it, but when things get up our nose that other people are doing, and it's not possible that other person can actually be annoying me. They don't even know me. I don't even know them. For me, and they're very simple, small examples of contamination, because it creates something that's just not very useful. So you're driving, you're in the supermarket too, or you're doing whatever, lots of things where other people are just going about their business, and it's not exactly how you want it to be. It's annoying, and it just creates stuff. And for me, it just feels like a whole lot of stuff. And it's not even necessarily big stuff, but if you go through a whole day like that, you get to the end of the day, it's kind of big stuff. Because it gets in the way of you being calm and present, and impact your creativity and your mood and all of that. So it's, for me, that word is so big. And I know we've heard it thousands of times, but I'm not quite sure how often we've actually talked about it in normal language. So to me, that's kind of how I think of normal language. Not like to me, I don't know if that's right or wrong. That's what it feels
like. I think it's a great point you bring up in terms of like the things that we make up for ourselves. Because as you were describing that, I was thinking about, we've had a lot of snow this winter, and like the way my neighbors shovel their snow annoys me. Like that some of them push it back into the street, and I'm like, why are you doing that? Like the plow's just going to plow it back in front of your driveway. Or, even last night, like I've got some neighbors who insist on putting their garbage bins out, like, yesterday morning, and the pickup is today, and they usually don't come till midday. So it's like, do you really need your bins out in the road 24 hours in advance? And it's maybe they do, maybe they're busy today, and they, like, I don't know what the circumstance is, but it's a perfect example of like, I get myself all worked up, and for what? Like it's so ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
almost, it's embarrassing even to admit it here. Or when I'm walking my dog and I see other dog owners who don't pick up their dog droppings or things like that, like it's, societal rules that should be in place, that are in place, and everyone should be following. And when you see people breaking those rules, that's one of my big pet peeves. So like, there's one to add to my list. I'll be happy when my fellow dog owners pick up their dog poop.
Pick up the food.
Yeah.
With you on that. And then I'm just thinking of a million other examples, like in, familial relationships. I mean, in a day in your house, you can probably think of, I don't know, dozens of things where if only so and so did it that way, why do they not do it? Why are they doing this? Or what, why didn't they put the teacup in the dishwasher that way or put it in the bottom shelf? It's just all these little things. It is all contamination. It just floods our minds with nonsense, really. Actually, yeah. We can even say that, couldn't we?
Yeah.
What's it? Yeah, where is it?
And even the other way around, like you're, happily doing your own stuff, and then somebody will walk up and say, like, don't put that dish there, don't do this or don't do that, and you're sort of like thinking, and that can trigger the same kind of feelings and the same sort of thing. And it usually ends up in tears, as they always used to tell us, but it works both ways.
Yep. Or in some cases, divorce.
Yeah.
I mean,
Even
But
for a total misunderstanding of how we work.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I was just cleaning the kitchen before this call, and my primary motivation for cleaning the kitchen is not so much to make my wife happy as much as it is to not make her angry. Which, from the understanding of this, like, a clean kitchen can't possibly make someone happy, or a dirty kitchen cannot possibly make somebody angry. Although I have the evidence to support that, in fact, that it appears to be that way. But it reminds me quite often when people come across this idea, they say, "Oh, so I can just leave the kitchen dirty? I don't have to clean it." So if the dirty kitchen doesn't make somebody angry, well, then why bother even cleaning it? So it's kind of this conundrum of, like, yes, even if you understand that a kitchen can't make somebody feel something or not, but that doesn't preclude you from still cleaning it. You can, the motivation maybe is slightly different. Anyway, that's a curious one, because that's where I think when people start first coming into this understanding, those are the rebuttals that you get for well, I have the evidence that it works this way, and I'll show you all these examples.
Yeah. And because the example itself is I guess what we call in the Jergo is the double bind, which is the hardest thing to get out of, or even you don't, within that misunderstanding is that the way to get out of it is to place yourself in the opposite position, but that's not how it works. And it's understandable that when people first come into this understanding, that, like, you just don't get it. And I mean, it's and I just caught something you were saying before, as I came in a little bit afterwards, but somebody said something about, like, you fling a word out there and it, like, really annoys you. You just, no, it was Lynne saying something about you realized that your questions weren't landing, Lynne, and you got the sort of feeling that, like, the other person was kind of thinking, like, what are these questions? So it's so difficult, I think, at the beginning of any coaching relationship, to literally get on the same page, because and again it's where teaching doesn't work, because teaching would just imply saying, well, these are the 3 principles, this is how it works, so get on and do it. But of course it can't even work there. It's really quite, or at least I'm just thinking now, it's a really quite tricky, even despite a very simple little equation like clarity equals capacity minus contamination, for example. It really is, tricky. It's tricky until you understand that understanding has got nothing to do with an intellectual capacity.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great segue when we get into chapter 2, because it's really, it's not a teaching thing, it's an insight thing, right? People have to have insights around the truth of how it really works.
Yeah.
I wondered if we could jump to the end on the thought experiment, and then we can move on. But the thought experiment here says, we all fall into the "I'll be happy" wind trap from time to time. As you reflect on your life so far, what are some of the ways you now realize you've been accidentally hoodwinked by this illusion until now? So we've already described a whole bunch of them, but maybe we can go around the...
What page are you on, Greg? What page?
This is
21.
page 21, the bottom of 21.
Oh, right, sure. Yes, gotcha. Oh, yeah. I've got that highlighted, actually. Oh, my goodness, I have millions.
Yeah.
Loads. So many.
Hundreds, thousands, regularly, all the time.
I mean, I can think of so many specifics. If you think about when you're growing up and all the things you dream, and you imagine that that's the thing. So, I don't know. It could be anything. It could be, marry the man of my dreams, or I go to, move to a faraway land, or, I have my dream house, or I don't know. I mean, all of those things, and any and all of those things, and many more things. And then it's when, or it could be anything. I remember specifically, I'll name no names. I'll just say a friend, a friend thought they would be happy when they bought for cash the latest. I can't remember if it was a BMW or a Mercedes, to be perfectly honest. And it turned up in the driveway of the friend's driveway, and we had the conversation weeks later, and they were kind of like, yeah, it was kind of cool for about a week, that car. Yeah, and it was kind of yeah, and there wasn't much said, because they were like, not feeling euphoria, not feeling it. Yeah, so I mean, it's just an example, I want that shiny thing, and I get the shiny thing, and shit, that didn't work either. Damn. So it's whatever the shiny thing is. And you see it with kids all the time. They want the shiny thing, and they get the shiny thing, and 5 minutes later the shiny thing's under the table or whatever, anywhere. And they've gone, I've forgotten about it now. It was great for a minute. Yeah,
or even with kids, sometimes the shiny thing is not even the shiny thing. The whole point of getting whatever that thing, it was more about the actual, am I able to twist my parents' arms so much so that they can do that thing? And they actually were never even interested in the shiny thing anyway. So that kind of says to me how things are handed down, because it's the behavior that's been handed down to, to sort of, and I think kind of in a normal everyday thing, we strive desperately to give an opinion, or try to show our worth, or try to do something. And again, because of this misunderstanding, we do it in a very kind of manipulative sort of way, but don't even realize that that's what we're doing.
when you guys mentioned the kids, I thought of my kids when they were really young. Like you buy them like these amazing presents for Christmas or whatever, and they play with the box.
The toilet box.
And like the box is going in the garbage. Like play with the actual toy, please. It cost me a fortune.
Yeah, I think we always play with the box.
Yeah. The other one that came to mind was outside a couple of weeks ago when we had a big snowfall, shoveling snow with my neighbor, and he was complaining, because 2 or 3 weeks in a row we've had snow, and I said, well, don't worry about it. Soon enough, we'll be complaining that it's too hot. Because that's what we do here in Canada. In the winter, we complain it's too cold and snowy, and in the summer, we complain it's too hot and humid. So it's, no matter what the weather is, there's always something to complain about. But it's just it's a kind of a funny, light version of the I'll be happy when. Why don't we leave chapter 1 there?